Hi, we're live. Hello, everyone, and happy Black History Month. Welcome to our first ever Black Girl Freedom Week. This is very excited. I'm Rashida Jones, and I'm overjoyed to be here and to kick off this exciting week of events and conversations about Black girl magic and joy and freedom. I'm joined today by the Executive Director of Grantmakers for Girls of Color and co-founder of Black Girl Freedom Fund and hashtag 1 billion for Black Girls campaign, Dr. Monique W. Morris. Hi, Monique.
Hi, Rashida.
Nice to see you. Happy Black Girl Freedom Week.
I know, our first ever. Here we go.
Here we go. So first, let's just talk about Black girl freedom.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say thank you, to you for being here with us and helping us kick off this really important week, this really important time. This movement around Black girl freedom is really about articulating and seeing Black girls for who they are, bringing them into a consciousness and bringing them to the center of our understanding of what's possible in this large month of Black History Month, making sure we don't lose sight of Black girls and their unique needs and the particular opportunities that we have to resource them. This summer, when there was a lot of racial justice uprising and we were in the midst of a global pandemic, I called together a group of friends, sisters, and co-conspirators who are really some of the most brilliant minds we have in conversations about racial and gender justice today. And I'd love to talk a little bit about them because they really helped us bring in this idea of Black girl freedom as a central part of how we understand what's possible in Black communities, particularly in Black History Month.
Yes. Well, please talk about them. They are superheroes.
Yes, they are.
your collective and your friends are
that's right. That's right. We have Latasha Brown from the Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium and founder of the Black Girl Freedom, the Black Girl Dream Fund, Tarana Burke from Me Too, Fatima Goss Graves from the National Women's Law Center, Joanne Smith from Girls for Gender Equity, Salamisha Tillett and Shahrazad Tillett from A Long Walk Home, and Teresa Younger from the Ms. Foundation for Women and Girls. Each of these women have really come together and mobilized their own resources to center Black girls, and were people that I knew could help us really pull together a strong demand in a very crucial time, not just to uplift the visibility of Black girls during Black History Month, but to also really pay attention to how we resource Black girl movement, Black girl capacity, advocacy, and joy. So the Billion for Black Girls campaign and the Black Girl Freedom Fund is a call for $1 billion investment in the brain trust, innovation, artistic vision, education, safety, joy, and freedom of Black girls and gender expansive youth over the next 10 years. It's a bold, exciting effort and one that we feel was necessary given the woeful underinvestment that we currently see in Black girl futures.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about that. You talked about the underinvestment as the problem, but the problem is sort of it's more complex than that. It's not, the underinvestment has a root, and it has a root in the history of this country. And then how does Black Girl Freedom Fund is attempting to look at this in a different way, in a solvable way?
Yeah, Black girls experience a lot in this society. And in addition to, some of the narratives that are really available to us in the public consciousness about Black girlhood, there's also this rendering of them as invisible, an understanding of them as fine, a way that we either don't see them, or when we see them, we make their presence problematic. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is understand better how to locate Black girls. Much of my work has been about locating Black girls in social phenomena, and also really understanding the power that comes and the wisdom that comes from centering Black girls in articulations about their own experience. What we know is that there's very little data on how much philanthropic support goes directly to Black girls. people haven't asked the question. So we don't really have the data to show, but what we do have is from a report that was produced by the Ms. Foundation for Women and Girls, which showed that of the $67 billion from foundations that's given away every year, only $5.48 goes to, is allocated per woman and girl of color each year. And that's women and girls of color all together, not just Black girls and women, right? So there are, all of these lingering issues, the adultification that Black girls continue to experience, which, has come into our consciousness around the work of Dr. Jamelia Blake and the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality, which shows that Black girls experience an age compression when they're as young as age 5. And it peaks when they're between the ages of 10 and 14, meaning that people will see them as deserving of less comfort, less nurturing, less protection, this reading of their behaviors as more adult-like and therefore more independent. And some of us have argued then less worthy of our investments or invisible in some of our conversations about adolescent health and well-being. The Grantmakers for Girls of Color partnered with the Urban Institute to try to dig a little deeper into this condition for Black girls. And some of the most recent social genome model estimations show that only 18% of Black girls are born into what we call advantageous circumstances at birth, compared to 65% of white girls. And that as Black girls get older, their location among advantageous circumstances drops significantly from 55% to 39%, which means that we really need to spend more time even thinking about how there are unique vulnerabilities impacting Black girls as they're coming out of adolescence and into their womanhood. So there are all these opportunities for us to invest in Black girls, Black girl well-being, and not just rely upon them to be fine and later in life locate themselves in conversations about democracy and equity without that investment happening in their lives very early on.
Right. Yeah. So I was going to say, I do feel like there are stories that leak into the mainstream around Black women and girls. And, they can be anything from Black women save democracy to, Black women experience, a completely different maternal health support than any other women. Black girls are adultified. They are over policed in a way that, even their male counterparts sometimes are not in the same classes. And then you get the other side of it, which is Black girl magic, and you have all this kind of celebration of being a Black girl. What do you think about that tension? Do you think that those two things are related, or do you think there's a disconnect there in terms of the narrative?
I think in some ways, there's this way that Black girls experience a dehumanization that makes it very difficult for folks to understand all the ways in which their resilience protects them from these very harsh conditions. And so, I think much of the sort of competing narratives that you're describing really is born out of a lack of people embracing the full humanity of Black girls, the lack of understanding about those conditions, because often our data do not reflect how they are manifesting harm. Some of us have or experiencing harm. Many of us have tried to document that in different ways. Many of the grantee partners that Grantmakers for Girls of Color supports and resources out in communities are very familiar with narratives that are competing that can undermine the capacity of Black girls to show up in their full authentic selves and to have their truths engaged and embraced in that broader narrative. But that's the disruption we're seeking to engage in, right? Like what we want to do is invest fully in these new narratives that more accurately preserve and reflect what Black girl experiences are, and how we engage in an investment that really advances their well-being in very real, concrete ways. A lot of that competing narrative is, I would say, a lot of it is about the adultification of Black girls. A lot of it is about us not fully engaging in a full understanding of how Black girls are developing as young people in our society and who are, worthy of our engagement and our articulation of justice.
Mm.
Black girls are central to justice. And honestly, every issue is a Black girl issue. And we have to see it that way in order for us to combat that erasure that we understand to be another form of violence that Black girls experience.
Yes, I love that. Every issue is a Black girl issue. And you push down this word resilience, which I think really resonates in the sense that there is something about resilience and perseverance and determination that is misconstrued as a means to be bypassed
Right. Or their resilience as the absence of harm.
Right.
Right. Like the way they show up so fully and joyfully and, apparently free, even if they are dealing with multiple forms of oppression, lead people to think, oh, well, they're okay. Right. Or they'll say, and we label it magic, right? A Black girl came up with Black girl magic, right? And so it was a magic because it was steeped in the wisdom in the bodies of Black girls, inherited from ancestors who did understand that you needed to engage a different kind of energy if you were going to deal with the levels of oppression that Black people have historically dealt with in this country, and therefore need to channel that as you are manifesting your greatness under all circumstances, despite all conditions. Right. But what we want this, right? Black girl freedom, Black girl freedom. We want us to be in a space where our girls are thriving, not in spite of conditions. We want our girls to be free, fully and for real.
Not a reaction to conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. That's beautiful. And what a huge, abundant, audacious ask for $1 billion. And to me, it's completely necessary at this particular moment in time. Can you talk, Dr. Morris, a little bit about the resources and the kind of on the ground stuff? I know this is very complex. It takes a lot of people and a lot of effort and a lot of organizations to come together to really create this kind of support and this vision for the future. But what, if you want to just talk through some of the resources that you have provided in the past and that will kind of, you'll bolster with this ask?
Sure. So Grantmakers for Girls of Color has awarded, we just entered this space into grant making, and we awarded just last year, almost $3 million out to organizations that are led by and that focus on girls of color, in a very robust and as urgent as possible way in the face of COVID-19, recognizing that many of our grantee partners are organizations that not only give us a framework for better understanding how girls of color are impacted by social conditions, but also really on the front lines of providing support. Our organizations work with girls and femmes of color who have really been operating at the intersections of multiple conditions of harm and have been, grand articulators of what is required for us to help them imagine futures that are just and liberated, right? So, our organizations work in mental, physical, emotional health areas. They work in education and economic justice. They work in spaces and with Black girls and other girls of color on policy issues, advocacy work. They work with institutionalized girls. They work with girls with disabilities. They work with girls who are, thinking about how they want to imagine their artistic futures and doing a lot of healing justice work. That's why I say every issue is a Black girl issue. And it's also why there's this opportunity for us to increase the amount that we invest in these organizations. Our capacity to engage in resourcing this kind of work is really contingent upon the co-investors who recognize this as an important priority alongside of us. We definitely see it all as a partnership. And it's partly why, we came together with the organizations and the women that I named to you earlier, is that, I am often in public spaces saying that safety is co-constructed, right? Which means you can't bring in another party to implement safety, that it really has to be created by people who are living that condition in the best possible way The 1 Billion for Black Girls campaign, the Black Girl Freedom Fund, is a practice of reciprocity that brings us into community with each other and our girls, and that brings all of us together to help design a space where girls themselves can decide how they want that money spent in their lives. We are pulling together through the Black Girl Freedom Fund a youth engagement strategy that will provide opportunities for Black girls to be part of the decision-making team around where that money goes and how it resources their lives. So not only is this is not, an effort to say, we have all the answers as Black women. Really what we're asking is for us to stand with Black girls in an appreciation and trust that they understand their conditions best, and therefore are able to guide us on really what is needed at this moment and into the next 10 years of their future.
That's such a wonderful part of this, because I think so often things are done for people and concerns are had from the outside. And yeah, if there is going to be a co-creation of a space that feels like it can really support and engage, it has to be done by the girls who are at the center of that, who are really at the center of experience. So that's, I absolutely love that. So you picked this week, I love that it's a whole week, to be Black Girl Freedom Week within Black History Month. Why this week?
This week is so important to Black girl history. This week is the week in which the shared birthday of Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison falls. Two individuals who have been critical in centering Black girlness, Black womanhood, critical reflections and deep rigor around understanding Black girlhood. And we wanted to pay homage to that. We wanted to uplift Toni Morrison's brilliance. We wanted to uplift Audre Lorde's brilliance and engage us in a Black feminist radical tradition that really challenges us to step up for our girls. It's also the birthday of my youngest daughter, Mahogany. So she shares that birthday with Toni Morrison and Audre Lorde.
Wow.
Just a really important, I know, no pressure. But I do, we wanted to really anchor around significant dates in Black girl history. We launched this fund actually on September 15th, which was the anniversary of the Birmingham bombings that killed the 4 girls. And we've been very intentional about which weeks we choose, which dates we choose, partly to remind folks in the public sphere of just how connected Black girls are to some of the narratives and understandings that we have about justice in this society, whether we name them or not, or we're still invoking their presence. And we wanted to be really intentional about that for this week. So we're very excited to have a full week dedicated to engaging our partners in a full blast of all the Black girl brilliance and some really critical discussions about where there could be more investment financially, investment politically, investment emotionally, et cetera, to support their well-being.
Well, I think what's exciting is there is a huge space that needs to be addressed and needs to belong to Black girls specifically. And Black History Month is great. It's a wonderful celebration and a time to remember, but there is something about that doesn't set aside this space for Black women and girls specifically. Can you talk at all about why right now is kind of the perfect time to launch Black Girl Freedom Week?
Yeah, Yeah, so like I said before, I think it's really important that we not render Black girls invisible in broad conversations, discourses, priority setting around racial justice. We are talking about investments in Black lives. We're talking about mobilizing to support a full articulation of freedom and justice, that if we do not intentionally center Black girls, we know they will be left out. The deep way in which a racialized gender bias and the sort of patriarchal norms that we have in our society can leave Black girls by the wayside is something we are not willing to allow to happen. Black women have been leading, Black women have been forces, Black women have been engaged at the highest levels of engagement and framework development for this racial justice moment. And they didn't just, come to this world as women, right? That for the most part, we have young people who have developed their consciousness around justice very early on. And we also see this opportunity with the convergence of racial justice movement and the opportunity for reflection that was given to us by this pandemic, this global pandemic, to really step back and think about how we want to do things better, right? How we want to imagine futures that are not doing well in spite of the harms that they engage in. I often talk about the opportunity for institutions and individuals to be part of a tapestry of healing. This is the moment for that. This is an opportunity for philanthropy to step in, and those who are part of our community, other donors, individuals with wealth, to come and be in community with us and say, yes, we will move resources to support an articulation of justice that is not only built around a singular narrative that if you invest in the men and boys, you're fine. We know that our investment in Black girls and their families is a critical part of that. That an investment in Black girls means that you do have whole, well, fully engaged and able Black women who are able to then be in community and lead communities in a way that really speaks to the power of a full, engaged network of individuals. And that's the kind of investment that we really want to make, and we want to be explicit about it. This is not the time to be, coy. Right? Like, what we want is the demand for $1 billion because, number one, it's possible. Right? It's possible. Right now, per woman of color and girl of color in the US, we're only giving $5 and some change, right? That's not enough to fully ensure an investment in futures that are just and liberated. Right. That is not enough to demonstrate that we see Black girls as sacred and loved. Right? We invest in that which is sacred. We preserve and support and nurture and grow that which is sacred. We do not render, this dehumanization, a possibility among that which we consider sacred. And so we want to remind folks of Black girl-ness, of the strength and resilience, of course, but also of the brilliance that can exist and be fostered. Imagine what 2030 can look like if we make this investment today.
Right. And to that point, even with the lack of investment, Black girls are leaders. They just are, and they show up. And just imagine what it looks like when you actually invest in that. I mean, just imagine what's possible. I'm going to tell you what my Black girl freedom dream is, and then I'm going to ask you what yours is. It's so hard to articulate because it's so big, but my dream is that representation, Hollywood, cultural, political, of Black girls is such that the whole spectrum is filled in, and that all Black girls feel like they can be themselves, truly themselves, and that their Black girlness is a sort of feel supported, and they feel safe in that nature of their identity, in a way that they can truly be themselves and be individuals, and that doesn't have to feel like a burden to them. It doesn't have to feel like a focal point. They really, really, really get to be themselves in a safe way. That's my hope. What is your Black girl freedom dream?
I would have to say my Black girl freedom dream. I say loosely and often that I want Black girls to feel that they are sacred and loved. To know that, to engage that, to bathe themselves in it, really. And what that means is I want them to have an unobstructed path toward the articulation of what is right for them, to engage in the full body of knowing and the full expression of justice that lives inside of us. And so, we know that we can support that by intentionally resourcing very specific points along a growth continuum. We know that we can support that with our time. We know that we can support that with the wisdom of elders and ancestors, and a full engagement of our communities, such that we are not ticking through all the ways in which Black girls experience disproportionate harm in 10 years, but rather talking about how Black girls are free in 10 years and full and engaged in 10 years. So that's really, my vision of freedom for Black girls is quite expansive, which is why I think I say so often that I just want Black girls to feel sacred and loved, because I'm very clear what we put into that which we deem sacred, as I said before, is very different than that which we pour into or don't pour into those that we feel are disposable.
That's beautiful, and I want that. Is there anything else that I didn't talk to you about that you would like to talk to anybody about before we wrap it all up? For now.
Just join us. This is an exciting week. We have a lot planned. We really want people to be in conversation with us on social media. Show us what you're working with. I mean, in this way, to really think about who you're working with, how you're engaged. Think about all the ways in which you're touching the lives of Black girls. Tune in when we're talking about policy objectives that center Black girls. Tune in when we're talking about Black girls with disabilities and some of the unique opportunities there. Tune in when we are talking about art and narrative work with Black girls. Talk to us about all of these ways in which you see Black girls emerging in our space. It's a very exciting week that we have planned, and I just want to see as many of you as possible in the chats. So.
And we want to encourage everyone to follow at Black Girl Freedom Fund, or visit www.1billionforblackgirls.org. That's numbers, 1billionforblackgirls.org. And I just want to say, Dr. Morris, you're the bomb. You're just the bomb. And I'm so excited about this. And this is the beginning of a movement. It's really, I'm really grateful to talk to you and be in conversation about this. And thank you.
Thank you. I got to show my shirt.
Yes, there you go.
There you go.
Happy Black Girl Freedom Week, the first of many, many, many.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.